Hi everyone, welcome back to session 3, and this one is on structure and plot. So, your first introduction to story structure was probably at school, and it was probably beginning, middle and end. And luckily that's still true. So most stories do still have those 3 distinct parts. We're going to take it a little bit further, and we're going to look at a sort of a 5-step story structure. This is one of the most common story structures around. And we're going to create a little plan at the end. So no like extended pieces of writing today, but more of a plan. But we'll come on to that in a second. So, like I said, the story structure we're going to look at has 5 distinct parts. The first one is called exposition. And this is kind of the part in the story, it's the very beginning. So it's the part of the story where everything's normal and we meet your character and you probably tell me where the character is. And that kind of thing, and it kind of sets the status quo for the story. The second one is called rising action. In this part, something happens, which is usually called your inciting incident, and this is what kind of kicks off the story. And you picture it as sort of a graph, so it starts like here, which is your status quo, and then your inciting incident happens, and this is your rising action, so this is point 2. So this is where the kind of tension and excitement starts building, because this thing that's happened has kicked your character into action. And then step 3, which is kind of, you kind of reach a top here on the graph, is called the climax, and that's where all this action that's been happening has reached its kind of fruition. And then after the climax, the graph starts to dip down a bit, and step 4, this is called falling action. So the big crisis has happened, and now we start to try and kind of get back to normality. And then step 5, finally, is called your resolution, and this would be the ending. This isn't to say that everything's the same as it was in the beginning, because then that would kind of mean nothing's really happened in the story. So your ending usually, well, it can be loads of things, but obviously sometimes your character's now a different kind of person to where they were here, to where they are now, because of this journey that they've been on. But obviously loads of different things can happen. It totally depends on the story. In the session notes, I will give you a popular example and how that structure kind of plays out in a proper story. But that's the kind of structure we're going to shoot for in our piece, because it's the most general one. So like I said before, for this session, I don't want you to do any kind of extended writing as such, but you can if you want, then feel free to do so. But for this one, I want you to try and do an activity which is really helpful for me when I'm planning out stories, and it's called a skeleton plan. And basically you take those 5 points which I just listed, and you just write 1 or 2 sentences about each one. So what's going to happen in the exposition part, maybe who your character is, where they are, what's the status quo, what's the thing that happens, the inciting incident, and what does that lead to, the rising action, what's the crisis, so how does it all come together in a big bang, what happens after that, and then how's it changed, how's it different in the end, what's the resolution to the journey that we've just been on. You can present your skeleton plan however you like. Lots of writers like to use post-it notes, just 5 different post-it notes, and then they can, or you more than 5 sometimes, and then they can just move them all around. You could do it on a graph. I personally just like to do mine in a list. Quite boring, but effective for me. It really depends on how you kind of like organizing your thoughts. But yeah, all I'm really asking for this week is a couple of sentences under each of those headings to plan out what your story is going to be, because the festival session next week is going to be bringing all this together. So we're going to be thinking about what we learned for character, what we learned for setting, and then this week what our sort of story structure is going to be, and we're going to roll all that together, and we're going to write a short story. So kind of keep in mind that this plan is going to be the thing that you write during the festival week, and that will really help because you'll have a bit of a head start. You can always come up with something new, but it might be helpful. So that's it. Please go and read the session notes and enjoy.